So, as we talked about during the time for all ages, it's hard when we think we know something to be true, and we then discover rock solid truths aren't in fact rock solid. And I thought about this a couple of weeks ago when I heard a news report, maybe you heard it too, and it was about 100 fishermen in Wisconsin, and they were on an ice floe, and the ice floe had detached and started to float away from the shore with the 100 fishermen still on it. And the truth is that they hadn't realized that they were in danger, because why would we think that the ground beneath us is moving? We expect it to be firm and remain so. So I expect it was probably a little disconcerting to find the land underneath one's feet literally floating down the river. Because knowing that that ground beneath us, wherever we reside, it's critical to our sense of safety. We humans have created many systems to feel a sense of that safety, especially those of us who can access it. Homes, insurance, wills, it all gives us a little bit of a sense of control over the world we live in. So when something threatens that, it can feel immensely challenging. So much so that we often, all of us, deny truths that are right there in front of us, just like the llama. We deny truths from the reality of climate change, to give but one example. But I'm also reminded of several years ago when so many Unitarian Universalist congregations were working through the pervasiveness of racism in our society, in ourselves. It's all around us, but it took us a lot to be able to look at that and say, yes, this is real, and it's something we need to work on together. Humans fight against truth that is right there to see if it conflicts with how we want to see ourselves in the world. Same with that iceberg. We see what we see and we take that to be true. But in the truth, it's just a little bit of a much more complex system that we don't always understand. You know, there's systems all around us, systems that cool the air and the water, systems that move the tectonic plates, systems that keep us whirling about somehow safely as part of this immense solar system, huge, unfathomable systems and patterns that keep our world going. And so the hidden part of that iceberg, the part under the water, offers a lot to think about that we might not reflect on a day-to-day basis. Evolution, beings and non-beings, if or whether there is a God or gods out there somewhere, what happens after we die, if we're reincarnated, so very much that we don't know. As a Unitarian Universalist minister, and I've been doing this for about a decade, I've always brought to congregations what I understood to be important. But I realize now that it was almost entirely from the top side of that iceberg. I brought that community matters, that we do better together than we do alone, that gathering together to share even individual faith journeys makes sense. And that's still true, but I'm realizing that it's only part of a larger picture, because the ground is melting beneath us too. And like those fishermen, I'm not convinced that we see that shift from our vantage point here on shore. We're seeing, I think, just the tip of the iceberg. And so we're doing what we've always done. We gather in faith, discuss hard topics, and work for change. And that keeps that veneer of safety and understanding in place. We see what we've always seen, and we do what we've always done. And I could be speaking of one of so many ways that Unitarian Universalists do this in beloved community, and all of that would be true. But I think we know, I think we feel in our hearts and our guts the ground moving very gently underneath our feet, maybe not gently underneath our feet. And I believe we are brave enough to sustain our humanity, even if we have to engage in more difficult ways to do so. And so when you go back to, I don't know if it's your covenant or your introduction, when you talk about risking bravely in the name of justice. That's what I'm doing with you this morning. Because I'm speaking specifically of Israel's attack on Gaza. I'm speaking of our faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism, of our denominational leadership, the UUA, that until this week has done little except sign a letter of concern and offer one webinar. And I'm speaking of so many within this faith tradition that are saying nothing and doing nothing. And I will admit that I spent years at the top of that iceberg not wanting to see these truths. It took the encouragement of many beloveds for me to do the work of unlearning assumptions that allowed me to see what had been there all the way along. And I want to tell you I'm doing this as a Jewish Unitarian Universalist. That's where I'm coming from. And I want to say this, that to not see these truths, to turn away from these truths, isn't only to abandon those starving in Gaza, though that too. It isn't only to sit by while our government supplies the weapons, though that too. Because if we stay quiet, if we don't look at what's beneath the surface, it's to abandon a whole younger generation of UUs who will not see this as a faith community who engages with the issues of our time. It is to abandon our Arab and Muslim Unitarian Universalists. And maybe most personally, it is to quiet all those UUs, including Jewish UUs, who want to say something but are stunned into silence by the lack of connection on this topic within our congregations. If Unitarian Universalism is to be a faith tradition that matters, we must change right now. We must be willing to be moved from safety to truth, from comfort to engaging with the deep difficulties of our time, or we will find ourselves just like those fishermen, alone floating down that river, having lost our moorings and unaware that it has happened. And I say this because I want more for our faith tradition, for us, for everyone, than the tip of the iceberg. And I know that UUs have this amazing collective power when they put it to use, and that you can help move us in the necessary ways. But first you have to see it, and I'm not convinced anyone's asked you to see it. Well, a little bit of caveat. I know Rev Otto has talked about it some. He told me that much. But I'm asking you to join the effort to become part of a saving faith, to do the work that our Unitarian part of our Universalist part of our heritage asks of us. If all are worthy, all are loved is to have meaning in our time, when brown Palestinian Muslim people are being murdered in ways unimaginable since the Holocaust, we must act now. Unitarian Universalism in our time must be an embodied faith. Our history is rife with history of souls that put the common good before their own, for the end of slavery and all the ways that needed to be addressed, for the vote for women, for reproductive freedom, for LGBTQ rights, and so much more. For those in Austria who made the chalice and then put it on their fence post to tell those fleeing the Nazis, you are safe here. And so I ask you, where are the brave UUs of this generation? I keep thinking of a UU book for young adults I keep thinking of a book used in our coming of age program titled, "To This I Give My Heart." Where are our hearts and what is our purpose? And where's our mooring if we stay silent while hundreds of thousands of more die from bombs and bullets, from starvation and disease? What is the purpose of a faith tradition if it is not put into action in the most critical times in our lives? I noted earlier that something big changed this week, a big change. The UUA released a letter strongly reiterating their call for ceasefire, but going much further this time. And if you haven't read it, I commend you to it. It's a good, clear, strong statement that I and others have been working for the last 4 months, and I am ecstatic to see the letter released. And here's why. It tells UUs, look here, see this, and put our love here. It forces us to do the shared work of deconstructing ideas and beliefs and lets us begin to discover the ideas that are right below the surface. So I invite you to be moved, to see that which is scary and new, and let that move you to act with love. Blessed be.